Fenrir. Fenrir, Old Norse, Fendweller, or Fenrisulfr, Old Norse, Fenrir's wolf, often translated Fenris wolf, also referred to as Hrothvitnir, Famewolf, and Vanagandr, monster of the Van, or Vanargand, is a monstrous wolf in Norse mythology. Fenrir is attested in the Poetic Edda, compiled in the 13th century from earlier traditional sources, and the Prose Edda in Heimskringla, written in the 13th century by Snorri Sturluson. In both the Poetic Edda and Prose Edda, Fenrir is the father of the wolf's skull, and Hati Hrothvitnisson is a son of Loki, and is foretold to kill the god Odin during the events of Ragnarok, but will in turn be killed by Odin's son Vithar. In the Prose Edda, additional information is given about Fenrir, including that, due to the god's knowledge of prophecies foretelling great trouble from Fenrir and his rapid growth, the gods bound him, and as a result Fenrir bit off the right hand of the god Tyr. Depictions of Fenrir have been identified on various objects, and scholarly theories have been proposed regarding Fenrir's relation to other canine beings in Norse mythology. Fenrir has been the subject of artistic depictions, and he appears in literature. Attestations. Poetic Edda. Fenrir is mentioned in 3 stanzas of the poem Völuspá and in 2 stanzas of the poem Vafthrûdnismál. In stanza 40 of the poem Völuspá, a Völva divulges to Odin that, in the east, an old woman sat in the forest Jarnvithar and bred there the broods of Fenrir. There will come from them all one of that number to be a moon snatcher in troll's skin. Further into the poem the Völva foretells that Odin will be consumed by Fenrir at Ragnarok. In the stanza that follows the Völva describes that Odin's tall child of Triumph's sire, Odin's son Vithar, will then come to strike at the beast of slaughter, and with his hands he will drive a sword into the heart of Thrungr's son, avenging the death of his father. In the first of 2 stanzas mentioning Fenrir in Vafthrûdnismál, Odin poses a question to the wise Jotun Vafthrûdnir. In the stanza that follows Vafthrûdnir responds that Sol, here referred to as Alfrithal, will bear a daughter before Fenrir attacks her, and that this daughter shall continue the paths of her deceased mother through the heavens. Prose Edda. In the Prose Edda, Fenrir is mentioned in 3 books, Gylfaginning, Skáldskaparmál, and Hadadal. Gylfaginning chapters 13 and 25. In chapter 13 of the Prose Edda book Gylfaginning, Fenrir is first mentioned in a stanza quoted from Völuspá. Fenrir is first mentioned in prose in chapter 25, where the enthroned figure of Hei tells Gangleri, described as King Gylfa in disguise, about the god Tyr. Hei says that one example of Tyr's bravery is that when the Æsir were luring Fenrir, referred to here as Fenrisulfr, to place the fetter Gleipnir on the wolf, Tyr placed his hand within the wolf's mouth as a pledge. This was done at Fenrir's own request because he did not trust that the Æsir would let him go. As a result, when the Æsir refused to release him, he bit off Tyr's hand at a location now called the wolf joint, the wrist, causing Tyr to be one-handed and not considered to be a promoter of settlements between people. Gylfaginning chapter 34. In chapter 34, Hei describes Loki, and says that Loki had 3 children with a female named Angerboda located in the land of Jotunheimr, Fenrisulfr, the serpent Jormungandr, and the female being Hel. Hei continues that, once the gods found that these 3 children were being brought up in the land of Jotunheimr, and when the gods traced prophecies that from these siblings great mischief and disaster would arise for them, the gods expected a lot of trouble from the 3 children, partially due to the nature of the mother of the children, yet worse so due to the nature of their father. Hei says that Odin sent the gods to gather the children and bring them to him. Upon their arrival, Odin threw Jormungandr into that deep sea that lies round all lands, and then threw Hel into Niflheim, and bestowed upon her authority over 9 worlds. However, the Æsir brought up the wolf at home, and only Tyr had the courage to approach Fenrir, and give Fenrir food. The gods noticed that Fenrir was growing rapidly every day, and since all prophecies foretold that Fenrir was destined to cause them harm, the gods formed a plan. The gods prepared 3 fetters. The first, greatly strong, was called Lighting. They brought Lighting to Fenrir and suggested that the wolf try his strength with it. Fenrir judged that it was not beyond his strength, and so let the gods do what they wanted with it. At Fenrir's first kick the bind snapped, and Fenrir loosened himself from Lighting. The gods made a second fetter, twice as strong, and named it Drami. The gods asked Fenrir to try the new fetter, and that should he break this feat of engineering, Fenrir would achieve great fame for his strength. Fenrir considered that the fetter was very strong, yet also that his strength had grown since he broke Lighting, yet that he would have to take some risks if he were to become famous. Fenrir allowed them to place the fetter. When the Æsir exclaimed that they were ready, Fenrir shook himself, knocked the fetter to the ground, strained hard, and kicking with his feet, snapped the fetter, breaking it into pieces that flew far into the distance. Hai says that, as a result, to loose from lighting or to strike out of Drami have become sayings for when something is achieved with great effort. The Aesir started to fear that they would not be able to bind Fenrir, and so Odin sent Freyr's messenger Skirnir down into the land of Svartalfheimr to some dwarfs and had them make a fetter called Gleipnir. The dwarfs constructed Gleipnir from 6 mythical ingredients. After an exchange between Gangleri and Hai continues that the fetter was smooth and soft as a silken ribbon, yet strong and firm. The messenger brought the ribbon to the Aesir, and they thanked him heartily for completing the task. The Aesir went out onto the lake Amsvartnir, sent for Fenrir to accompany them, and continued to the island Lyngvi, Old Norse, a place overgrown with heather. The gods showed Fenrir the silken fetter Gleipnir, told him to tear it, stated that it was much stronger than it appeared, passed it among themselves, used their hands to pull it, and yet it did not tear. However, they said that Fenrir would be able to tear it, to which Fenrir replied. The Aesir said Fenrir would quickly tear apart a thin silken strip, noting that Fenrir earlier broke great iron binds, and added that if Fenrir wasn't able to break slender Gleipnir, then Fenrir is nothing for the gods to fear, and as a result would be freed. Fenrir responded, with this statement, all of the Aesir looked to one another, finding themselves in a dilemma. Everyone refused to place their hand in Fenrir's mouth until Tyr put out his right hand and placed it into the wolf's jaws. When Fenrir kicked, Gleipnir caught tightly, and the more Fenrir struggled, the stronger the band grew. At this, everyone laughed, except Tyr, who there lost his right hand. When the gods knew that Fenrir was fully bound, they took a cord called Gelgja, Old Norse fetter, hanging from Gleipnir, inserted the cord through a large stone slab called Gjöll, Old Norse scream, and the gods fastened the stone slab deep into the ground. After, the gods took a great rock called Fati, Old Norse hitter, batterer, and thrust it even further into the ground as an anchoring peg. Fenrir reacted violently, he opened his jaws very wide, and tried to bite the gods. Then the gods thrust a sword into his mouth. Its hilt touched the lower jaw and its point the upper one. By means of it the jaws of the wolf were spread apart and the wolf gagged. Fenrir howled horribly, saliva ran from his mouth, and this saliva formed the river Van, Old Norse hope. There Fenrir will lie until Ragnarok. Gangleri comments that Loki created a pretty terrible family though important, and asks why the Aesir did not just kill Fenrir there since they expected great malice from him. Hai replies that so greatly did the gods respect their holy places and places of sanctuary that they did not want to defile them with the wolf's blood, even though the prophecies say that he will be the death of Odin. Gylfaginning chapters 38 and 51. In chapter 38, Hai says that there are many men in Valhalla, and many more who will arrive, yet they will seem too few when the wolf comes. In chapter 51, Hai foretells that as part of the events of Ragnarok, after Fenrir's son Skull has swallowed the sun and his other son Hati Hrothvitnesen has swallowed the moon, the stars will disappear from the sky. The earth will shake violently, trees will be uprooted, mountains will fall, and all binds will snap. Fenrisulfur will be free. Fenrisulfur will go forth with his mouth open wide, his upper jaw touching the sky and his lower jaw the earth, and flames will burn from his eyes and nostrils. Later, Fenrisulfur will arrive at the field Vigridr with his sibling Jormungandr. With the forces assembled there, an immense battle will take place. During this, Odin will ride to fight Fenrisulfur. During the battle, Fenrisulfur will eventually swallow Odin, killing him, and Odin's son Vithar will move forward and kick one foot into the lower jaw of the wolf. This foot will bear a legendary shoe for which the material has been collected throughout all time. With one hand, Vithar will take hold of the wolf's upper jaw and tear apart his mouth, killing Fenrisulfur. Hai follows this prose description by citing various quotes from Völuspá in support, some of which mention Fenrir. Skáldskaparmál and Hadadal. In the epilogue section of the prose Edda-book Skáldskaparmál, a eumerized monologue equates Fenrisulfur to Pyrrhus, attempting to rationalize that it killed Odin, and Pyrrhus could be said to be a wolf according to their religion, for he paid no respect to places of sanctuary when he killed the king in the temple in front of Thor's altar. In chapter 2, wolf's enemy is cited as a kenning for Odin as used by the 10th century skald Ejutal Skallagrimsson. In chapter 9, feeder of the wolf is given as a kenning for Tyrand. In chapter 11, slayer of Fenrisulfur is presented as a kenning for Vithar. In chapter 50, a section of Renjarstrapa by the 9th century skald Bragi Boddason is quoted that refers to Hel, the being, as the monstrous wolf's sister. In Chapter 75, names for wargs and wolves are listed, including both Hrothvitnir and Fenrir. Fenrir appears twice in verse as a common noun for a wolf or warg in Chapter 58 of Skaldskaparmal, and in Chapter 56 of the book Hadadal. Additionally, the name Fenrir can be found among a list of Jotnar in Chapter 75 of Skaldskaparmal. Heimskringla. At the end of the Heimskringla saga Hikonar saga Gotha, the poem Hikonarmo by the 10th century Skald Eyvindr Skaldaspilr is presented. The poem is about the fall of King Hakon I of Norway. Although he is Christian, he is taken by two Valkyries to Valhalla, and is there received as one of the Einherjar. Towards the end of the poem, a stanza relates, "Sooner will the bonds of Fenrir snap than as good a king as Hakon shall stand in his place." Archaeological record. Thorvald's Cross. Thorvald's Cross, a partially surviving runestone erected at Kirk Andreas on the Isle of Man, depicts a bearded human holding a spear downward at a wolf, his right foot in its mouth, while a large bird sits at his shoulder. Rundata dates it to 940, while Pluskowski dates it to the 11th century. This depiction has been interpreted as Odin, with a raven or eagle at his shoulder, being consumed by Fenrir at Ragnarok. On the reverse of the stone is another image parallel to it that has been described as Christ triumphing over Satan. These combined elements have led to the cross as being described as syncretic art, a mixture of pagan and Christian beliefs. Gosforth Cross. The mid-11th century Gosforth Cross, located in Cumbria, England, has been described as depicting a combination of scenes from the Christian Judgment Day and the pagan Ragnarok. The cross features various figures depicted in boar style, including a man with a spear facing a monstrous head, one of whose feet is thrust into the beast's forked tongue and on its lower jaw, while a hand is placed against its upper jaw, a scene interpreted as Vithar fighting Fenrir. This depiction has been theorized as a metaphor for Christ's defeat of Satan. Ledberg Stone. The 11th century Ledberg Stone in Sweden, similarly to Thorvald's Cross, features a figure with his foot at the mouth of a four-legged beast, and this may also be a depiction of Odin being devoured by Fenrir at Ragnarok. Below the beast and the man is a depiction of a legless, helmeted man, with his arms in a prostrate position. The younger Futhark inscription on the stone bears a commonly seen memorial dedication, but is followed by an encoded runic sequence that has been described as mysterious, and an interesting magic formula which is known from all over the ancient Norse world. Other. If the images on the Toolstorp runestone are correctly identified as depicting Ragnarok, then Fenrir is shown above the ship Naglfar. Meyer Shapiro theorizes a connection between the hellmouth that appears in medieval Christian iconography and Fenrir. According to Shapiro, the Anglo-Saxon taste for the hellmouth was perhaps influenced by the northern pagan myth of the Crack of Doom and the battle with the wolf, who devoured Odin. Scholars propose that a variety of objects from the archaeological record depict Tyr. For example, a migration period gold bracteate from Trollhättan, Sweden, features a person receiving a bite on the hand from a beast, which may depict Tyr and Fenrir. A Viking Age hogback in Soburn, County Durham, northeast England may depict Tyr and Fenrir. Theories. In reference to Fenrir's presentation in the Prose Edda, Andy Orchard theorizes that the hound, or wolf, Garmr, Skull, and Hati Hrothvitnisson were originally simply all Fenrir, stating that Snorra, characteristically, is careful to make distinctions, naming the wolves who devour the sun and moon as Skull and Hati Hrothvitnisson respectively, and describing an encounter between Garm and Tyr, who, one would have thought, might like to get his hand on Fenrir, at Ragnarok. John Lindo says that it is unclear why the gods decide to raise Fenrir as opposed to his siblings Hel and Jormungandr in Gylfaginning chapter 35, theorizing that it may be because Odin had a connection with wolves? Because Loki was Odin's blood brother? Referring to the same chapter, Lindo comments that neither of the phrases that Fenrir's binding result in have left any other traces. Lindo compares Fenrir's role to his father Loki and Fenrir's sibling Jormungandr, in that they all spend time with the gods, are bound or cast out by them, return at the end of the current mythic order to destroy them, only to be destroyed himself as a younger generation of gods, one of them his slayer, survives into the New World Order. He also points to Fenrir's binding as part of the recurring theme of the bound monster, where an enemy of the gods is bound, but destined to break free at Ragnarok. Indo-European parallels have been proposed between myths of Fenrir and the Persian demon Ahriman. The Yashts refer to a story where Taxma Europe rode Angramanyu as a horse for 30 years. An elaboration of this allusion is found only in a late Parsi commentary. The ruler Taxmarayu, Taxma Europe, managed to lasso Ahriman, anger Minyu, and keep him tied up while taking him for a ride 3 times a day. After 30 years, Ahriman outwitted and swallowed Taxmariyu. In a sexual encounter with Ahriman, Jamshid, Taxmariyu's brother, inserted his hand into Ahriman's anus and pulled out his brother's corpse. His hand withered from contact with the diabolic innards. The suggested parallels with Fenrir myths are the binding of an evil being by a ruler figure and the subsequent swallowing of the ruler figure by the evil being, Odin and Fenrir, trickery involving the thrusting of a hand into a monster's orifice and the affliction of the inserted limb, Tyr and Fenrir. Ethologist Valerius Geist wrote that Fenrir's maiming and ultimate killing of Odin, who had previously nurtured him, was likely based on true experiences of wolf behavior, seeing as wolves are genetically encoded to rise up in the pack hierarchy and have, on occasion, been recorded to rebel against, and kill, their parents. Geist states that apparently, even the ancients knew that wolves may turn on their parents and siblings and kill them. Modern influence. Fenrir has been depicted in the artwork Odin and Fenris, 1909, and The Binding of Fenris, around 1900, by Dorothy Hardy, Odin und Fenris Wolf and Fesselung des Fenriswolf, 1901, by Emil Depler, and is the subject of the metal sculpture Fenrir by Arne Vinjgunarud located on the island of Askøy, Norway. Fenrir appears in modern literature in the poem Om Fenrisulven Nog Tyr, 1819, by Adam Gottlob Holmschlager, collected in Nordenskuter, the novel Der Fenris Wolf by K. H. Strobel, and Tilkamp Mod Dod by Darriot, 1974, by E. K. Reich and E. Larson. Fenrir also appears in 3 of fiction books, giving his name to the werewolf Fenrir Greyback in the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling and appearing in the form of Fenriswolf and Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, by Rick Riordan, as the main adversary in the first book of the series. His influence is also seen in Sarah J. Maas' Throne of Glass series in the character Fenris, who can transform into a large wolf. Fenrisulf, also known as Mogrim, is a wolf and the captain of the White Witch's secret police in C.S. Lewis's novel The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. The character is named Fenrisulf in early American editions of the book, as well as in the 1979 animated adaptation. Fenrir was also the influence for Karkaroth, an evil wolf serving Morgoth in J.R.R. Tolkien's fantasy world of Middle-earth. Fenrir appears as a son of Loki in the 13th season episode Unfinished Business of Supernatural, who sold the Archangel Gabriel to the Prince of Hell, Asmodeus. An enraged Gabriel tracks down Fenrir and after a battle, kills Fenrir with a specially crafted wooden sword through the heart. However, Fenrir succeeds in injuring Gabriel in return, as the Archangel is in a weakened state due to his long captivity by the Prince of Hell, Asmodeus. Fenrir was previously mentioned in Season 9's Sharp Teeth under the alternate name of Fenris, an episode in which he was worshipped by a werewolf cult that wished Fenris to bring on Ragnarok, so they could gain domination over humankind. The cult was wiped out by protagonist Dean Winchester after he discovered their plot. The Warhammer 40,000 Space Wolves chapter of Space Marines were influenced by Norse mythology, with their homeworld of Fenris taking inspiration from Fenrir's name, as well as being home to massive wolves. Notes: as being home to massive wolves. Notes: as being home to massive wolves.